Welcome, Age of Vintage Society. Gloria Swanson was one of the most prominent stars in the US who reigned supreme during the silent film era. She was an actress and producer, highly acclaimed for her stylish fashion statements. She started out as an extra in films and gradually worked her way up to become one of the biggest film personalities of her times. How did Gloria Swanson spend over $8 million in the 20s alone? Make sure to watch the video until the end and leave your thoughts in the comments. If you are new here, join our wonderful community by subscribing to the Age of Vintage channel. Gloria Swanson was most famous during the silent film era as both an actress and a fashion diva, under Cecil B. DeMille direction. She was also one of the first stars to dispute the Hays Code by producing the band Sadie Thompson in 1928. In 1929, Swanson smoothly shifted into talkies with the Trespasser. Personal problems and changing times saw her popularity fade during the 1930s. She is best known today for her role in the film Sunset Boulevard. She was born Gloria May Josephine Svensson on March 27, 1899, to Joseph Svensson and Adelaide Klanowski in the Lakeview district of Chicago. Her father was employed by the U.S. Army Transport Service, so the family moved frequently during her childhood. They lived in Key West, Florida and San Juan, Puerto Rico for several years. Eventually, Gloria and her mother would return to Chicago while her father remained stationed overseas. Gloria was a beautiful and talented child, and her mother was constantly making her beautiful clothes. Her mother worried that her ears were too large, and she was always making her special muffs and hats to hide them. During her school years, Gloria loved to perform, and she acted in a number of school plays and was the star of an operetta while in Puerto Rico. She possessed a lovely singing voice, and she decided that she wanted to be an opera singer. She was 15, and she and her mother had moved back to Chicago when Gloria's aunt suggested that they make a trip to S&A Studios. S&A was a film studio in Chicago, which also had studios in California. Gloria was immediately fascinated with filmmaking, but she thought that movies themselves were crude and vulgar. The most famous films at the time were slapstick comedies. Before she knew it, Gloria had requested a bit part in a film, and her good looks and stylish clothes got her the attention of S&A directors. The money was good and the work was not that bad, so Gloria continued to accept jobs at S&A. It was a good way to earn extra money for her favourite pastime, buying clothes. She didn't intend on going into show business, but she seemed destined to be one of the biggest stars of the silent movie era. Swanson continued to make two-reelers for S&A, and it was there that she met Wallace Beery, who would become her first husband and persuade her to move to Hollywood. She found filmmaking in Hollywood to be more rewarding than it had been in Chicago, and she began to take a keen interest in acting as a career. She gained modest success when Max Sennett teamed her with Bobby Vernon in a series of films together. Gloria longed to do serious dramas, however, and she came to despise the Sennett comedies and felt that they were tasteless. Her chance to escape Sennett came when the Keystone Studios went bankrupt. Although Sennett wanted to retain Swanson and turn her into a second Mabel Normand, Swanson balked and Sennett tore up her contract. Following her fallout with Sennett, Swanson migrated to Triangle Studios. The executives decided at the very beginning to build Swanson up to star status. They gave the best production values that they could for her first Triangle film, You Can't Believe Everything, and Gloria clicked with director Jack Conway. Things eventually did not turn out like she thought they would. Conway left Triangle because of creative differences, and Swanson found that her scripts kept getting worse with each new project. Soon it seemed that most of her features were spy melodramas such as Secret Code. After 8 mediocre films with Triangle, Swanson was released from her contract because the studio was facing bankruptcy. Her career took a major turn in 1919 when Cecil B. DeMille offered her a contract. DeMille transformed her from a typical comedienne to a lively, provocative, even predatory star. Gloria Swanson starred in the Cecil B. DeMille comedies Male and Female and The Affairs of Anatole. made in the late teens and early 20s. In The Affairs of Anatole, not only does DeMille show women smoking, drinking during Prohibition, exposing body parts seldom before seen on a movie screen, and frankly pursuing men who attract them, he also presents this debauchery with amazing visual flair. Swanson made 6 films with DeMille, and it was a very happy and satisfying time in her career. DeMille's films catapulted Swanson into superstar status. Her every move was followed and reported by fan magazines. They expected to see her dressed to the hilt in the latest fashions, and Swanson never disappointed them. She is sometimes credited with starting the fashion for wearing colourful jewellery. The actress wore an Irib-designed emerald, amethyst and gold necklace in the 1920 film Affairs of Anatole. Her stardom as an actress in the mid-1920s earned her millions of fans and millions of dollars. Realising her box office value early in her career, she took control of her life. Soon she was not only producing her own films, she was choosing her scripts, selecting her leading men, casting her projects, creating her own fashions, guiding her publicity, and living an extravagant and sometimes extraordinary celebrity lifestyle. By the mid-20s she was the highest paid actress in Hollywood. It was reported that Gloria made and spent over $8 million in the 20s alone. Her studio contract required her to wear the latest clothes and jewellery whenever she appeared in public at her own expense. Gloria hardly needed this incentive because of her extravagant taste in jewellery. She wore so much expensive jewellery that she had to rent it. In spite of paying only 10% of the value of her jewellery, one year her annual jewellery budget was $500,000. If Mary Pickford was America's sweetheart and Theda Bara is goth vamp id, then Gloria Swanson was the fashionable cool girl, gallivanting around Hollywood in peacock plumage and beaded tassels. She wore clothing from Paris and shoes from Italy, and rarely appeared in public without being camera-ready, her saucer eyes rimmed with kohl. She was a proto-influencer, the kind of celebrity who could get thousands of women to buy a brand of soap simply by mentioning it in a sidebar in photoplay. She also was smart enough to know when her value had exceeded that of the men she was making money for. Somewhere during her wandering army brat upbringing, Swanson had picked up an independent streak. She wanted to make the films she wanted to make, with financing she roped in herself. And she did, after joining United Artists, but it came with a liability. When her movies flopped, she was the one left holding the bag. With the exception of her one successful independent silent film, Sadie Thompson, the rest tanked. She tried to transition to talking pictures, and she proved that she could. The Trespasser, a drama in which Swanson played a poor woman who becomes entangled with 2 millionaires, was a hit, but by then her heart was no longer in it. She moved to New York City in the late 1930s, started a company that brought Jewish scientists to the United States during the war, hosted a series of political meetings out of an old theatre, and shilled for beauty products and clothes lines, but mostly she went out of style. In her private life she bought a fabulous mansion and lived like a queen. She also collected a long line of lovers and married men of her choosing, including a French marquis, thus becoming America's first member of nobility. The Kennedy patriarch, Joe Sr., the Hollywood mogul, accused bootlegger and head of the Securities and Exchange Commission, had an affair with her beginning in 1927 that was an early indicator of just how ruthless the Kennedy men could be. Their affair was the talk of society in both Hollywood and Boston, where Rose Kennedy chose to ignore it, at least publicly. Joe Sr. became Swanson's business manager. The extravagant star was reportedly $500,000 in debt, shortly before becoming her bedmate. He allegedly swindled her by setting up a production company in her name, which he used to pay for everything from gifts for the star to redecorating her studio bungalow. He dropped Swanson like a hot potato when his tenure in Hollywood was up. After their 3-year relationship, Joe Sr. had reportedly tripled Swanson's debt to $1.5 million and profited millions. After his departure from the scene, Swanson was nearly broke, virtually unemployable following the debacle of her most recent film, and soon to be divorced by her irate husband. Unfortunately for Gloria, she married her fourth husband before her divorce from her third was complete, adding bigamy to her list of questionable moral activities. Swanson was a walking scandal for most of her Hollywood career, at least during its so-called golden age, but today is considered one of that era's greatest stars. She became a talented businesswoman who patented inventions and won fashion awards for her clothing designs, a natural foods activist decades before it was fashionable, an exhibited sculptor, and a designer employed by the United Nations. Though she had one of Hollywood's most famous exit lines, "All right, Mr. DeMille, I'm ready for my close-up," the real Gloria Swanson never looked back. As a devoted and loving mother, she managed a quiet success of raising 3 children. In her iconic comeback role as has-been Norma Desmond in 1950's Sunset Boulevard, Gloria Swanson raves, "I am big, it's the pictures that got small." Almost 10 years following her last film, Swanson would make the most memorable comeback in film history. The role of Norma Desmond in Sunset Boulevard had been turned down by Mae West, but Gloria snatched it up. Her portrayal of a faded silent screen film star who imagines a glorious comeback was inevitably compared with Swanson herself, but it was to be a portrayal that would forever be remembered by film audiences. But it also created her long misunderstood persona. Norma Desmond, an aging screen siren and recluse who resides in a Rococo mansion and has not made a film in decades. She lives in a fantasy world, one where she is still glamorous and relevant, ever teetering on the precipice of a comeback. Norma was a tricky role to cast. No one in town wanted to play a has-been. We now know how it ended. Swanson got an Oscar nomination. The film is number 12 on the AFI's 100 Greatest Movies list, and Norma is a camp icon for acerbic delusionals everywhere, but before the film debuted, nobody knew if it would work. Married 6 times and linked romantically, or rather erotically, with dozens of other men, she brought an electric charge of sexy glamour to the screen and helped create the public image of the passionate movie star's larger-than-life existence. Cranky and eccentric in her private life, eating a salt-free vegetarian diet of lentils and seaweed, she introduced actor Dirk Benedict about macrobiotic diets when he was battling prostate cancer. He refused conventional therapies and believed healthy eating helped with his recovery. Later, Swanson travelled to the United States and helped to promote the book Sugar Blues, written by her husband, William Dufty. She made only 3 films after Sunset Boulevard, but starred in numerous stage and television productions during her remaining years. She was active in various business ventures, travelled extensively, wrote articles, columns, and an autobiography, painted and sculpted, and became a passionate advocate of various health and nutrition topics. She might have lived the fullest life of all the Hollywood stars. She could be a bit snobbish, she could be a bit didactic. She could probably come into your kitchen right now and throw out all your food, tell you to go drink a gallon of water, then make you take off your dress so she could tailor it. But she was also seriously funny, with an acerbic, enviable wit. In every picture I see of her, no matter her age, she looks so alive, so fiercely present. She was a force to behold, and the author of her own life. She died from a heart ailment at the age of 84 in 1983. If you liked this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you are new here, and if you want to support my work, please visit my Patreon page. Now it is your turn. What do you think about the life and legacy of Gloria Swanson? She was a symbol of enduring glamour, who was perhaps the most glittering goddess of Hollywood's golden youth in the 1920s.